Reflect, Commissioner Sobroff, Figueroa Villa, Madison, and Saltzman are present, and we have a quorum. Number 1 on the agenda, commission comments.
Excuse me, I do have 2 brief comments. First, I want to thank the chief and the department for allowing me to show my respect on Friday at the site of the accident regarding Detective Allen. I appreciate the opportunity to do that, and I was very moved. Second, I just want to report that Commissioner Madison and I attended the department's LGBTQ forum last week, and I want to thank the department for its continuing efforts with that particular community where progress continues to be made. The attendance at the forum was high, and there was lots of information shared and lots of things the department's doing as a follow-up, and I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
The following are my comments. The unprecedented string of catastrophic events that have taken the lives of 5 of our officers in just a few months make it so easy to refer to the sheer numbers instead of the individuals. Nick Lee, Chris Corjito, Roberto Sanchez, George Nagata, Ernest Allen. Not numbers, but human beings. Not numbers, but our family members. Not numbers, but each a hero. Each with a unique success story. Not numbers, but dads, sons, uncles, cousins, mentors, friends, and husbands. So as the chief has said in the past, we will honor their service and remember each of their spirits forever. Forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 2 on the agenda is the report of the Chief of Police, Chief Paysinger.
Mr. President, members of the Commission, on behalf of the Chief of Police, I too would like to add my thoughts and prayers to the members of the department who have passed. As many of you know, today is the memorial service. And leave us not forget Central Officer George Nagata, who passed away having suffered a heart attack on duty. We remember him and his family and friends in our prayers, and also tomorrow is the memorial services for Officer Sanchez, Roberto Sanchez, at Our Lady of the Angels Cathedral, where we will remember him for the life that he lived. And as you mentioned, the funeral services for Detective Ernie Allen are also pending. He who died in a very tragic traffic collision only yards from the scene where Officer Nick Lee lost his life in a similar traffic incident. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and loved ones and the legions of friends that he also left behind. This is a difficult time for the Los Angeles Police Department. I started my run with the LAPD some 40 years ago as a police student worker, and the number of successive deaths that we have seen over the last several months is unprecedented in the modern era of our department. But I'd also say this, the public support, the well wishes, the outreach, the emails, the postings of support on the various social media websites is truly special. And again, on behalf of the Chief of Police, to all of those who have reached out and offered their well wishes, we say thank you. During this special time, I'd also like to offer a big thanks, acknowledgement to the department's psychologists that are assigned to behavioral science services, who have been a huge support to the LAPD family. They are frequently unheralded. We very seldom hear from them. We always see them on our stations. They're seldom mentioned outside the LAPD, but I believe they're silent warriors, and the support that they offer all of us during this special time, and the support they provide us and their families doesn't go unnoticed by any of us. And so to them we offer a very special thanks. I'd also like to publicly acknowledge the Macerich Corporation for their recent donation of $10,000 to the cadet program on behalf and in the name of Valley Traffic Officer Chris Cortijo, who died in a very unfortunate circumstance. That corporation will be formally acknowledged at the cadet graduation ceremony that will be held on Saturday, June 28th. Note too that in that graduation we will be presenting college scholarships in the name of Officer Cortijo from the monies that have been provided by the Macerich Corporation. I'd like to also mention that the next Cadet Leadership Academy starts on Saturday, July 26th. We're actually expecting an even larger class than we've seen, the one that's graduating, about 650 students. I also like to thank, again, the Ray Charles Foundation for their steadfast commitment and their support over the years of the cadet program. Over the past several years, they've both given and pledged to the program over $1.5 million for youth across this city to give them an opportunity to succeed. It allows us to shepherd this community youth development campaign to the point that it's seen now. You can see by the photographs, one of the things that this program does is help to change lives. And we're very, very pleased for the Ray Charles Foundation and also most recently the Macerich Corporation for their support. Very briefly, our Part 1 crime prevention campaign. We're still moving at a very, very nice pace. The total violent crime year to date, we're seeing a 4.1% reduction. Property crime is at 9.1, excuse me. 9.1% reduction for an overall Part 1 crime reduction of 8.3. By bureau, 6.6% reduction in Central Bureau. South Bureau is 11.6% reduction. Valley is 10.6% reduction, and also West Bureau is coming in at a 2.7% reduction. Also, I'm very pleased to report for the chief that a total gang crime reduction is at 17.7%. And that concludes the report of the Chief of Police.
Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda is the report of the Executive Director, Mr. Tiefenk.
Morning, Mr. President, members of the Commission. A very brief item just for the public's information and department. There'll be no Commission meeting on Tuesday, May 27, 2 weeks from today. That's the Tuesday after Memorial Day. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Item number 4 is the report of the Inspector General, Mr. Bustamante.
Thank you, Commissioners. I have nothing to report.
Item number 5 consists of information items and filed items relative to noise variances and special event permits submitted for the period ending May 9th, 2014. Item number 6, presentations. Do we have any presentations?
None today.
Thank you. Item number 7 is consent agenda items. These items are considered to be routine and non-controversial, upon which the board is provided with adequate information for approval without inquiry or discussion. Would a commissioner wish to pull an item as special for discussion from 7A through 7F?
I'd like to pull 7E and F. Wait a minute, F and the 2 contributions, which is F,
E and F.
E and F. So let's move the others.
I move approval of items 7A, B, C, and D.
All those in favor?
Do we have a second?
On items E and F, I want to thank both. Both the contributors, much appreciated. And I want to give a shout out to Rihanna, who donated $25,000 to our cadets program to be split amongst the cadet program and for the families of the fallen officers, which I think is very cool. And the last thing, before the city attorney comes over and kicks me, I want to give a shout out to the Coro fellows who are here, tomorrow's leaders today. Stand up, guys, from all over the place doing the Coro program. What do you think about that, Mr. City Attorney?
You need a motion.
I need a motion to give a shout out, to move the other two items.
Move approval of items 7E and F.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We are now on item 8, regular agenda items. Would a commissioner wish to pull an item as special for discussion, 8A through 8C?
I would like to hear from the department on items 8B and 8C, and I move approval of item 8A.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We will go to 8B. Department's report dated April 30th, 2014, relative to the confidential informant audit, IAID number 13-076.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Detective Dave Kennedy with Internal Audits and Inspections Division.
Dave?
In front of you, you've got the confidential informant audit. It's conducted basically every 2 years at this point to ensure compliance with policies and procedures and so forth. As you can see from the results of the audit, out of the 11 objectives...
Hey, Dave, use the mic a little closer.
Sorry. As you can see from the results of the audit, out of the 11 objectives that were tested, 3 had results of less than 95%. Most of those findings were administrative in nature, with limited or no risk involved. Seated next to me is a project manager, Sergeant Bedoya, who can assist with any technical aspects of the audit itself, or we can turn to Captain Clark with...
Will you guys describe for the layperson in front of you and behind you what the confidential informant process is? In other words, yeah. We have a policy, and just describe it to me. What is a confidential informant?
That would be an individual who is utilized with a department, and for various reasons. There are various motivations that this individual may have. And Gang and Narcotics Division, confidential informant, takes care of the confidential informants, and they oversee the program whereby an officer will utilize a person that becomes a confidential informant for various reasons, to find out information on illegal doings out in the community, and for various other reasons.
So these are informants in the community, not informants from the department?
They're within the community.
Within the community?
Right.
Right, they're not department
And
personnel.
how does one become a confidential informant?
I'm going to refer to Detective.
Hi, I'm Detective Sylvia Ruiz.
Hi, come on up, Sylvia.
Okay.
Sorry to put you through this, but it's helpful to us.
Again, Sylvia Ruiz, and I'm in the department's informant coordinator. The reason for informants coming into the department, it's typically for criminal informants or citizen informants. And those persons are made aware or come in contact with police officers or detectives and express an intention to become an informant. And they can their motivations are either for monetary, or they want to work off for a letter of accomplishment, good citizenship, or revenge. And basically, that detective will complete documents in order to sign them up to see if, in fact, they qualify to be a department informant. And these forms consist of basic personal information, conducting database searches on the person that's interested in becoming informant. So there's various documents that are completed. Those documents are completed by the handler and submitted to their immediate supervisor, who approved by the divisional commanding officer. And then it comes to our office at the Department Confidential Informant section.
Okay, good. Rob, do you have your questions?
No, I didn't. Just wanted to hear the presentation we've heard and thank the department for the progress here and thank the auditors for the helpful audit. I would move approval of item 8B.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That didn't hurt.
Okay, we are now on 8C, Department's Report dated May 9, 2014, relative to the Personnel Selection Criteria and Process Audit, IAID number 13-059.
Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jeffrey Phillips, Police Performance Auditor and Signing Officer in charge over at Internal Audits Inspection Division. Next to me is Sergeant Chow, and she's my assistant and certainly the person that would know very specific things about this audit, so I might be reaching out to her. Before you have the Personnel Selection Criteria and Process Audit. This audit was on our annual audit plan, and notwithstanding it being on that schedule, the basis or the foundation of looking at this process came from a consent decree that was commonly referred to as the Hunter-LaLaye Consent Decree. This was a little over 20 years ago. However, the department moved to include processes that would ensure that that things that were included in that consent decree continued on. And the consent decree was, the settlement agreement was there to address discrimination based on ethnicity. The city did include the gender aspect as well. So that process was included. So looking at table number 1 within the audit, overall, there's some areas that the department did really well, and certainly there's some areas that there's room for improvement. I think to sum up the findings, the process for selection is very comprehensive, and there's a lot of information that has to be included, a lot of information that has to be documented. And I think in some of those areas, that's where there's room for improvement in just ensuring that all the documents are included, that all the information is included within those documents. Some of the feedback we did get from the various entities, this was a department-wide audit, so some of the feedback we got was that the department had gone for quite some time without or with very limited openings, and so that has loosened up in the last year or so. And so a lot of the folks that are going or that are in the position to conduct the interviews and to fill out all the information are relatively new. And so perhaps this audit will go ahead and shed some light on the importance of just getting everything, crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, so to speak. There's 3 objectives there that were included that also we refer to them as performance information. We don't consider those as compliance, but just information only objectives. And so with that, we'll certainly entertain any questions you may have.
Good morning. Just so I make sure I understand where you're going, I'd like to, at the very end of it, because I'm not sure I understood what that meant, but at the end of it, it said, recommendation, none. What does that mean? Does that mean that out of the entire audit, with whatever areas were not completed or lack of diversity in the panels that were determining who was going to be considered, that as it stands right now, we don't have any recommendations?
Typically, when we go ahead and formulate recommendations, it's typically something that we might find deficient in policy, or we can identify specifically something we could recommend to create that change. So we really wouldn't draw recommendations to address things that we can't pinpoint, that deficiency between what the criteria is and what the condition or what we find. So we really didn't have any recommendations in speaking with folks and obtaining feedback. We really didn't find anything that we could formulate to recommend. Now, that's not to say, and I'm not going to speak for the department, but that's not to say that the department is going to be taking some action on some of these things. And again, some of the feedback is...
Right, I got it. So now, actually, I'm looking for somebody who is going to speak on behalf of the department, if there are recommendations, because I have questions, but I got to go first to the entry that says there are no recommendations.
Yeah, obviously, in those pieces, as far as recommendations, they formally come from IAID. However, for us, we read these audits and we take all kinds of information that comes from them and how we can improve, what is most important for us. And when we saw the level of consistency within the breakup or breakdown of our gender and or race in the as far as the
Findings?
pardon me?
In the findings?
No, not necessarily, just in the boards themselves.
Selection boards.
Yeah, the selection boards themselves. Obviously, that caused us some concern. The problem that we have is, and then we're working together with IAID on this, is I don't have the details as far as, was it an African-American and a male white? What were the breakdowns? In some cases, I know this, that prior to this, this audit, we knew we were going to have a large number of applicants. And as a result, even in the direct reports of OO, we sat and we talked about how important it was that we would have diverse boards, and that, in fact, that we brushed up on all of our details, because it has been a very, very long time when we've had those. And the number of applicants that came in was substantial, 1,000 plus applicants that were coming in for multiple boards at a time. And so you had boards that needed to be switched because of days off, and in order to get all of those interviews in, it was a substantial task. So not that there's any excuses there, but I'm just letting you know that was what needed to be done in that short period of time. And so we will look at those boards, at what they were, once I get the details from IAID, and we'll see exactly what that means. I was very troubled by reading it, but I can't tell what exactly that meant. Was there an African American and a Hispanic on the board? I don't know. Well, maybe that was a really good board for that moment. So we just don't know at this point.
Well, there's a table number 7 on page 12, which breaks down the interview boards. And a 2-member board with same ethnicities and same genders,
Yes.
right, 11 out of the 46, or 24%. So to the extent that there's some ability to identify gender and ethnicity, that does exist. Somewhere, somebody can tell you whether it was 2 African Americans or 2 Latinos or a Caucasian and a, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That can happen.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm kind of stumped
Yes.
at this point, because I don't think that I have enough information to intelligently ask questions about this audit. And I've written down some questions, but I'm not sure where they're going to go. Especially when you kind of tell me that some people can speak on behalf of the department and some can't. So I'm kind of the mind that I'd like to have the report more detailed,
Yes, ma'am.
and to have people present the report who can speak on behalf of the department. And maybe I'm not sure if all of it is contained specifically in the audit or not. I mean, Rob, you've done this before.
Yeah, I share Commissioner Madison's concerns. I have concerns particularly about Objective 3 Objective 9 and Objective 10, 10 being the one you're just talking about. And I would find it, as I think Commissioner Madison would, helpful to have some department response on those three that we could look at as responses to what the data are in the audit.
Yeah.
And if you look at Objective 3, the primary problem there was one bureau. And we saw that that was that one bureau was a brand-new bureau, employees. In fact, the vast majority of all the administrative staff in that bureau had left just prior to these boards. So that gave us a little bit, and I'm just talking about number 3, not regarding to the race or gender issue. So as we looked at that, Operations West Bureau was responsible for 4 of those. So that was just something that we saw that. And again, we're just talking about OO, and this is a department audit, a complete department audit.
Can I just address that one point? And the reasons why the administrators in that bureau would largely be new is because the bureau itself was new, or there was a change in personnel?
There was a big change in personnel. The chiefs got moved, and staff went with them, and a new staff came in. And again, not exactly, I'm not giving you this is a big excuse for that, but that combined with the vast majority of those boards, what happened in the West Bureau situation is they had a bunch of positions that were available. And instead of having individual interviews, what they did is they said, okay, for all Sergeant 2s, for every division in the Bureau, you're going to apply right here. And so as a result, it didn't necessarily fit perfectly into the match that we wanted to have it fit into this audit, so it came off as a deviation. So that's how that all went as far as West Bureau went.
So is there a, just in terms of the human resources practices, generally speaking, is there a common practice for how such postings and therefore interviews would be conducted? Or is it because, as you said, there were so many openings at once that it kind of led to, well, I'll use your words, some deviations? Chief?
Commander, I can speak to the selection process. We have specific rules that are required by the city charter and then, of course, our personnel department on certain selection processes, and then we have our own rules that we follow within the department. So when there is a position that's going to be advertised or open, we advertise it. The entity that has the opening or openings will send personnel division an advertisement form. We verify that they in fact have the openings, and then we publish, and generally we publish the ads very infrequently now because of the problems that we have with the department. We used to do it on a monthly basis, and now we do it about quarterly. And then what happens is the ad has to run for 10 consecutive days. During that time frame, we take applications, and sometimes we'll extend the process if we don't get that many applications, or something significant happens, like what's recently happened with the deaths of officers. We may extend the opening. And then once the date closes, then that's when the interview processes begin. And it may be helpful for us in Personnel Division to actually come back with a verbal report for you and agendize the selection process, because I think that's where some of this is vague right now.
Yeah.
And you're piecemealing our selection processes with the specifics of this audit, and we can do that. Francois and I can come back and do a verbal report for you on our selection process so that you can see how the advertisements go, where we post it, and how employees are notified of the openings.
I think I'd welcome that. I prefer as much as possible data.
Oh,
I prefer metrics as much as possible. I appreciate the written reports, but I think that here we get a lot of verbal reports where there's a lot of numbers thrown around, and then I don't have anything to take home and stare at. And so I actually would prefer if we could have more metrics in these reports in written. The other thing is that I just want to make sure I'm understanding. My question about the West Bureau and people moving around, that suggests that there's not an institutional memory And it also suggests that when someone is moved, some leader is moved from one bureau or division to the other, in the middle of what would be extraordinary circumstances because now new positions have opened up, is it not reasonable to go back to whoever would have been in position at that time and have that person or those people still weigh in, even though they're no longer assigned to that bureau or division?
Did you want to?
Well, yes, ma'am. Obviously, there are always where the chiefs get together and they do the exit. When one leaves, the other one briefs the other. Well, here's the situation. The reason I brought that issue up is this. What we're looking at here, outside of the gender breakdown and the diversity breakdown of the boards, the actual statistics themselves as to how we did overall with regard to all of the different documents that need to be in that one package, there was only we still had an 80% success rate with the paperwork. And really, that's what the vast majority of this is just the paperwork. And I just wanted to separate the two issues, because I did see them as completely different from the gender and the diversity issues and the actual documents themselves. I think that most would look at these documents based upon the timeline, the total number of bodies that were applying. We actually did fairly well with the 80s, 90s, and 100%. So with the minutia, that unfortunately I have to talk about sometimes, we did very well on that. The other stuff is something I think we need to follow up with you on.
And I know that you all have lots and lots of responsibilities and lots of things to do, and so I certainly don't want to make this next statement without having said that. But I will tell you that having spent more years than I'd like to count in corporate America, usually before, inside the same corporation, if you are moved to another role, promoted and/or transferred to another role, there's a certain amount of paperwork that you have to complete. And even if you've moved to another division, if the new leader can't complete that paperwork because that leader's not familiar with that individual, then even though you've moved on, you're still going to have to get that done.
Commissioner, may I? Commander Blake is right, as is Chief MacArthur, but at the end of the day, there's a consistency and continuity with which we're required to complete these documents. In this instance, we fell short. The idea here then is a constant reminder to our people that we have a responsibility to do the right thing. It's notwithstanding the fact that Commander Blake was right in terms of there being an inordinate number of applicants for jobs, numbering in the hundreds. Sometimes there are some issues that are overlooked, but by the same token, there is a process in place. There is a procedure in place to capture this information. And at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to do that.
Right. And, because coming out of the Hunter LaLaye and all the issues related to that, this is a particularly sensitive area. So to the extent that we're looking at openings and who can get those openings and what the racial and gender breakdown of those people are, this ends up being very important. We've heard a number of times here that we're the post-consent decree commission. And so there's no federal oversight as it was maybe a year or so ago, and so it's kind of up to us. And that's why, and I don't want anybody to be, to feel that we're singling you out, but I want to go on record as saying, having been an executive vice president for diversity in corporate America, this is really important to me personally and professionally. So to the extent that these kinds of reports are going to come, and we're going to talk about the composition of boards and, 47% of the 70 interview boards consisted of an ethnic diversity, but the remaining 37 were not diverse. If I tell you that I highlighted that, I highlighted it, I underlined it, I started, I circled it, because we have to do better. We have to do better. And I, at this point, would say, I'm ready to pass it on to the next commissioner, but I think that I'm not prepared to accept this audit just because I don't think there's enough information in it.
May I make a suggestion on the audit? The audit, maybe you can accept the audit, but direct my shop to do a more thorough discussion, because the audits are generally higher level, and it won't be a verbal report. It'll be one you can take home and digest. We could do a report that would do a little bit of the history piece of how we got to where our selection processes are right today, what the process actually involves. In some cases, the diversity of the board, there may only be one board member, but we can explain all of that. So you're not going to be, I'm not ethnically diverse, I'm who I am. So if I'm on the board, it's not a diverse board. So we can explain a variety of those things, and I'll work with Personnel Division to do that. And that way we can get into the detail of what you would like to understand in the report, and I can go in any direction that you direct me to go. And that way the audit can go on, but any questions that you have out of the audit, it will probably fall in my shop for you in terms of the historical and where we are today. It's just a suggestion.
Well, table number 7 that you already prepared, which talks about the interview board members, the number of interview boards, the percentage of diversity, you already have that information. It's just not contained in this audit. And my concern is when we accept this as an official document, and it's in the records, I couldn't begin to even explain what this means. Maybe you all know, but what I'm saying is that for me, as in accepting the audit, the information was contained in what you gathered. I think it should be inserted in an audit before I'm willing to vote to accept it.
Here's my sense on this. So in ethnic diversity, you got 53% were not diverse. So I understand some of those were only two people on the board. Maybe they were both women. I'm sorry. Maybe they were both Asian. Maybe they were both Caucasian. Maybe they were both African American. Those are not diverse. The gender, 45% were not diverse, but so that means there were either 2 men or 2 women on the.
Right.
I think to Commissioner Madison's point, I think that we should basically look at all 70 of them and do a little synopsis of all 70 of them. I also believe that can be done outside this audit, and I think that we got a lot of work to do on it. But those are the red flags to me.
So one of the suggestions, just to throw it out there, is also that we can go ahead and we can go ahead and do a follow-up to this audit. We would maybe meet and
If we don't approve this audit today and wait for the other document, what is the disadvantage? Who's hurt? What happens?
I'm not.
No harm, no foul?
Yeah.
So then let's continue it. If you're more comfortable doing that, I respect that.
I might suggest, Mr. President, that we continue this audit.
Yeah.
Instruct the department to respond on the issues we've talked about. And when that report comes back, we can take action on the audit. And I would ask Mr. Teefank to work with Chief MacArthur to make sure it's clear the questions that we have that we're asking.
Okay, we do have 2 public comment cards on this.
Hold on for 1 second. Chief MacArthur, so these
Mr.
folks said no harm, no foul if we continue. Do you agree with that?
I am fine with that. I just want to be very cautious, and we'll work with Richard to not merge 2 different reports. Audits are quite different than some of the information you're asking.
That's okay.
And
Okay.
maybe what we do,
You could do a supplemental report
we'll
or
figure
something.
out the best way to do this so that they can both come to you at the same time, because we do follow very strict audit guidelines.
You're interested in the
And at the same
information,
time,
getting
we'll
all the
find out
information,
for future audits what can go into the audits versus what I can do in a separate report for
Got
you.
it.
And we'll work with Mr. Teefank on that, and the Inspector General's office, who
Good.
reviews all our audits as well.
Mr. President, if I may offer a suggestion. I think it would be helpful for the department so they're responsive to the issues. We've heard from Commissioner Madison. If any of the other commissioners have questions or concerns about the audit, if you could bring those up now so that the audit staff can be responsive in a supplemental audit to the questions within the audit. That's one piece of this. The second piece would be a report from Chief MacArthur as to the personnel process. They are separate processes, as she said. We would bring both of those reports back at the same time. But I don't think you want to commingle the personnel selection piece of this with the audit, because then that mixes apples and oranges, so to speak. So that would be my recommendation. Any questions that you have other than what have already been articulated about the audit, or that you would like to see related to the personnel process, if those could be articulated now so the department, when it comes back, is responsive to all your concerns.
No more from me.
Sorry, I want to be clear. I do not have any questions or problems about the audit. I'm looking forward to hearing from the department in particular on the diversity among the selected candidates and non-selected candidates, and diversity among the selection board members as part of a more full explanation for us of the selection process.
And I agree with Commissioner Saltzman, and my very specific about table number 7 is that the breakdowns, 2-member board, same ethnicities, 2-member board, same genders, 3-member board, same ethnicities, 3-member board, same genders. I'm looking for greater explanation.
Have to go do them all of them.
Right.
And that we might be able to work with the supplemental. That should be part of the supplemental versus the selection process. So we will work closely with Mr. Tiefenk to make sure we address all the issues in both reports.
Thank you.
We do have 2 public comment cards. We have Mr. Ted Hayes.
That jumped out at me, too.
This is under the Brown Act, a criticism, which you may not prohibit. We're at a disadvantage. The doors don't usually open here until about 2 or 3 minutes before your meeting is due to begin. That means we cannot take access to that binder that Ms. Mohammed is perusing right now, which is the information you have before you right now. So we have to take our time and our attention trying to see what you're talking about, what the information might be. If the doors were open earlier, say maybe 15, 20 minutes earlier, or if the binder was placed someplace outside, we could be readily informed just as you are. Now, on the issue, I saw Secret Service, expenditure of Secret Service funds. Whose Secret Service is that? The U.S. government? The LAPD? I have no idea. I don't know the structure of the department, so I don't know whether you actually have a Secret Service. And how much money is it? What does that form 15.37.01 look like?
Mr. Hayes, that's not the item.
Have you ever?
That is not the item we are on.
What item are you on?
8C. Personnel selection criteria and process.
Well, you know what? That's another criticism. Why don't you indicate what item you're on? You've been City Hall. You know they got 2 TV screens up there to tell you what item you're on. Okay? Since I was so busy looking at the binder, I wasn't really paying attention to what was happening. I thought about the audit on spies, informants. It's not. It's not that?
No.
It's on personnel.
Right.
Pardon me, but I think my information was valuable nevertheless. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jabral Mohammed.
Good morning, Commissioners and Chief Facesinger. This is Jabril Muhammad for Bismillah, the Justice Movement. It's great to see that we are getting audits. That's good. We get information. However, our interest, given the conduct of the police, our interest has more to do with the psychological and psychiatric profiles. We, Bismillah, the Justice Movement, would very much like to know what our mindsets are in regards to our assessment and our analysis when we make these selections. We say this because so much is being condoned. You know, we just had a murder in a tourist trap. The people, they alleged the guy had a gun, I don't know. They said there was 2 shots fired. I heard 2 shots fired, that's all. But then the guy was dead. I don't know. Didn't nobody die until the police got there. Didn't nobody get shot till the police got there. This is a tourist trap, okay? Universal City. So we got, we talking about criteria in terms of how the hiring practices and who is okaying and who is giving the flag to go in regards to these hiring practices. So this is a very good audit. And here again, I point out that we want a psychiatric as well as a psychological profile in regards to the people that we're paying, because there's an onslaught of misconduct that's fatal misconduct. So here again, the commission is to be commended for its scrutiny, and that's enough to be said on that. Thank you.
Mr. President, if I may, just for the public's information.
Yes, sir.
When the agenda is posted, which generally is late Thursday or on Friday, all of the agenda items are placed online and are accessible either through lacity.org or through lapdonline.org. Also, public copies of the agenda are available in room 134, which is the commission office. Those items are available for inspection anytime during the time that our office is open, which is generally from 6:30 in the morning till 5:30 p.m., Monday through Friday. This room is closed until we begin the meeting, opens generally about 9:15, and we then remove the book from there to this room. So the items are available to the public for inspection, and they are available, as I said, online or printed copies here. And that information has been posted on our agenda under the last page where adjournment is, and it has been that way for several years.
Thank you, sir.
There are no other comment cards?
So I move we continue the item and request the department to report back after consulting with Mr. Tiefenk to make sure that they're responding to the questions that we've raised.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are now at the point of public comment. We have 2 public comment cards. We have Jabral Mohammed and Ted Hayes.
Here again, good morning, Commissioners, Chief Paysinger. This is Jabril Muhammad for Bismillah, the Justice Movement. Here again, you know, our mantra in pursuit of violent criminals for the sake of public safety. And in our observation that the public is in jeopardy. And I say that because in our monitoring the audit given to us by Commander Stewart last week, in that audit we had 42 complaints filed by African Americans in 2013, 15 complaints filed by Latino Americans in 2013, and 5 complaints filed by Caucasian Americans. And in this finding, it was pointed out by Mr. Saltzman that none of these people were found guilty in all of these complaints. And these were the complaints that were filed. And we're not talking about the incidents that that never made the paperwork, and we know that that happens. However, we're saying, how is the commissioners addressing this? How is the public to take this when those people that follow the due process and the public procedure is not in the civil procedure, excuse me, is not given their due course? Can we say that some 60 some odd complaints and none of the people were right in their findings or right in their filing of the complaint? I mean, let's revisit that. Thank you.
Ted Hayes.
I have noticed that there's been criticism of what has been said here by members of the public. I appreciate you pointing out that I was on the wrong agenda item, but as I said, there's no way for anyone in the public to know what you're doing when they walk in the door. So if you can somehow remedy that, will be fine. I appreciate what the executive director said, but I'm talking about the memorandums, not about the agenda. Now, there's a way to get around that by requesting that the memorandums and everything else be mailed to you. Well, you know what the mail is like nowadays, so you can't expect promptness in that preparation and that mailing. But that would also put a burden on your staff, generate more paper, more stuff for the landfill. So the thing is, I think you ought to not be so much concerned about the public speaking, but what the law says you cannot speak about. You can't speak about anything that's on the agenda. As I recall, the Lakers and Sterling were not on the agenda. But we did have a meeting where members of the commission and I spoke about the Lakers and Sterling. But it's prohibited by the law for you to have any comment on things which are not on the agenda. Had I known you were going to talk about Sterling and the Clippers, rather, I would have been prepared. But I wasn't. My stuff was extemporaneous, but nevertheless useful. So let's find out what you must do comment-wise and adhere to that. Because as I have had a criticism about the behavior of the police staff walking out on the public, not listening to public comment, you said nothing. There's been no remedy to that. It might happen again.
Thank you, and there are no other public comment cards. We will now go to item number 10, closed session items. The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item numbers 10A, 1, 2, and 3 in accordance with Government Code 54957.